We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Few things from me off the top. First of all, happy Canada Day. That's today, the day that we're recording. Happy 4th of July.
Canada gets a day? You got a whole day?
We absolutely get a day. July 1st.
Is that like Independence
Canada
Day or what?
It's quite similar. It's
What did you do?
When we became a country.
No, I got that. But what did you do today?
Oh, what did I do?
Canada
I
Day?
went to work, and then I got prepared to go camping tomorrow, which is why we are recording tonight.
Wait, they don't give you Canada Day off work?
Well, I get paid time and a half for working.
Oh, okay. So it's not like it is a holiday.
It is a holiday. It is
And
definitely.
you worked on a holiday, so you get extra money
That is correct.
with which to buy more headphones.
Probably not headphones for me, but yeah, it'll go towards something. In any case, I also said happy 4th of July because by the time this podcast comes out in audio version, it'll be the 4th of July. So to all you Americans, happy 4th of July. And for anyone who was like, Rob said he got that Logitech camera last week and was looking forward to maybe that being the case. Nope, haven't used it yet, but it's not because, mostly time I didn't even bother, but I also started playing around with OBS. The software,
OBS is pretty awesome.
Well, it's very, very powerful. We're going to have to switch over to that. Google just gave the alert that August 1st, Hangouts are going away. So I think we're going to have to use Skype or something else. Cause
Why don't we use Twitch or something?
I do
see
have
why
a Twitch
can't,
account.
Right? I do too. I mean,
I signed up for Amazon Prime, so I automatically got a Twitch account, whether I wanted one or not.
Yeah.
Well, whatever it is, you and I will have to find a way to talk to each other, which I will then put as side by side inside of OBS and then still stream it out over YouTube. So we're gonna have to figure all that out, but we're not gonna play around with it tonight because we're already starting much later than we wanted to.
Right, and not only that, I've got the last 2 weeks of August I will not be here. July. I think I told you this already.
Last 2 weeks of July.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So next week is the last podcast I'm doing this month.
Okay.
So we can try next week. I am technically I could try to do an extra podcast or two. If there's that many questions. I don't know. There are.
We didn't get a ton of questions this week, but we're starting late.
Everybody needs to go out to the beach.
I know.
I hate going to the beach.
And if there are lots of questions and you're not around, well, I'll scrounge up a guest co-host.
Yeah.
That's how it'll go.
Guy who owns the podcast is the most replaceable guy on the podcast. I'm okay. You know what? My ego can handle that. I'm good. I'm good with it. How you doing, Rob? How you feeling?
Doing all right. Trying to make sure we have everything to go camping.
Yeah, so you big camper? You camp?
No, I'm not a big camper. So that's why
you're like a tent camper? Or you're
yes,
like
very much tent in a purchased place
like
where
a
you
little
go.
place. Like you drive up and then you get out of the car and you put your tent right there.
That's correct. Yeah, you drive your car right into your little lot that you've rented and set up your tent there.
It's
right by
electrical outlet right there for you to plug in all your devices.
No electrical outlet, but a gorgeous lake. Although it's supposed to be not very hot in the time that we're going. Only like
you need
low
some
20s.
Heat. Come visit me for 5 seconds, dude.
I could imagine.
Here.
So I imagine swimming in that lake would be very, very frigid. So that probably is not what we're gonna do. Probably just gonna hike.
There'll be some Finlandians out there just like going, "Oh my god, it's amazing."
People will, yeah. I don't own a wetsuit, and we'd probably want a wetsuit to go in that water.
Really? A wetsuit is a glacier? Glacial water?
No, it is northern. And when the ambient temperature is only like 21, northern lake water is not going to be warm, man.
Yeah, 21 ain't that warm.
No, it really is not.
25 is where I start to feel like, it's shorts weather,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that goes camping.
And once in a very, very once in a while.
My wife and I have not been camping in a while, and it's about time we go again. But the problem is around here, there's like 2 weeks that are really super good for camping, and you can't predict when they'll be.
Oh, okay. I was going to say either that or everybody knows it, and so if you go anywhere, it's packed.
Yeah. We've tried, but the last couple of times we've gone camping, my kids there's been a child that has gotten sick.
Sure.
Yeah, and it just ruins it for everybody. All right, the AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com. leave us a comment there if you want. Or did I say question at avrant.com? Is that
Yeah,
did I
question
say
at
that?
avrant.com. That was the first thing.
Holy, okay.
Email. That's the place to go. Yep.
I should have gotten a beer. Then I can at least explain this. But no, all I am is a little dehydrated from being in Florida. Yeah, you can leave us a comment at avrant.com. You can go to facebook.com/avrant podcast. You will also find us on youtube.com/avrant. Contact Rob directly at rob@avrant.com or his I almost said his Twitch. His Twitter is at First Reflect.
I think that's my Twitch too, although you won't find me there. I've never gone there other than to log in to get my free Nintendo whatever the heck their yearly thing is.
Oh,
that's why I did.
I watch Twitch all the time. I love watching Twitch. I do.
I really have not used it at all.
It's like for a while it took me a while to kind of like get it, but it's like being in for me it's like being in college.
Okay.
In college you go to your friend's house, somebody's playing like one of those JRPGs, and you just sit there and drink a Coke and hang out with your friends and talk to them while they're playing the video game, and because that's what happens. That's Twitch. Sometimes. I guess there's other things that happen on there too.
Well, you didn't give out your personal contact info.
Tom at avrant.com. Twitter's at avrant_Tom. Let's get to our listeners of the week. Become a listener of the week. You support the podcast in some way. One way you can do that is going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, leaving us a PayPal donation. We want to thank Joshua and Stefan for doing that this week. Thank you, Joshua and Stefan.
Indeed. I'll say it again. Joshua and Stefan, thank you very much for those PayPal donations.
I'm glad that you said it, because I apparently tried twice, missed it up both times. We also want to thank our 82 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up. It's like a automatic monthly donation, like a voluntary subscription, you could think of it. Minimum of $1, maximum of infinity, and we have 82 patrons over there, so thank you very much.
Every time I think about that, I think about the Better Off Dead, that movie with John Cusack like a million years ago, when the kid's asking for his $2. I think that there should be a minimum of $2 just for that reason alone. All right, in the news, is it Johnny?
No, it's Johnny.
Johnny with one N.
Yeah.
Johnny Ive announced that he's leaving Apple to start his own design firm called Love From.
Yes.
I hate it. I guess he's leaving in 2020 along with industrial designer Mark Newson. It has already been announced that Apple will be their first client, so Ive's design influence is certain to continue on future Apple products. Fantastic.
So it made lots of waves through the tech industry after that announcement. I'm like, I don't know how much effect it's truly going to have. It's more just like he can
charge more money.
Perhaps, but also
money.
Just he can design for places other than Apple. That's really the thing. But it doesn't seem like he's going to stop designing things for Apple altogether if they're the first client.
Apple's notoriously fickle. We'll see. Vesa has announced the new DisplayPort 2.0 specification that they expect to appear in products by late 2020. DisplayPort 2.0 offers up to 77.4 gigabits per second bandwidth, enough to run two 4K displays at 120 hertz simultaneously, or two 8K displays, or a single 16K display. It uses a Thunderbolt 3 16K. Shut up.
Yep.
It uses a Thunderbolt 3 connection and is backwards compatible with DisplayPort 1.4 signals, including USB-C video. So that's cool. Yeah.
Yep. It's using that port that looks like a USB-C plug. Not all USB-C plugs are Thunderbolt plugs. And actually, not even all Thunderbolt plugs are USB-C plugs, but Thunderbolt plugs can be USB-C plugs. So they're using that form factor for the thingy. But 77.4 gigabits if it's the actual Thunderbolt 3 connection.
USB-C is the one that's reversible, right? It goes and goes.
Yes, you can plug it in either way.
I love USB-C.
I know. It's a shame that it hasn't really, taken over more.
My last phone, I just got a new phone this week. The Pixel XL had the USB-C, and I got a Pixel 2 XL. And that comes with the dongle because it doesn't have a...
Yep.
Immediately lost that dongle. I put it by the phone.
I think they're counting on it.
It's gone.
That's why they charge like $45 for a replacement dongle.
I'm so pissed because I was going to buy new headphones, but I don't want to buy new headphones if I can't plug them into my phone.
It's like an 8-cent piece of copper.
It's so stupid. All right. Roger B. Hastings announced his retirement as president and CEO of RBH Sound.
RBH, Roger B. Is it Hasing or Hassing?
I think it's Hasing, but I might be wrong about
I'm
that.
not sure. I haven't heard him say it.
I've heard his name said a lot.
He would be the RBH of RBH.
And they talk about Roger like he walks on water. The RBH guys do. So the ones I've talked to. So they said what are they going to say? He's not nice. They speak very highly of him. He will retain partial ownership of the controlling interest has been purchased by Todd Stewart, who will immediately assume the roles of president and CEO. Stewart, an electrical engineer, land developer, and retail and real estate manager, expects to transition more of RBH products to U.S.-based facilities. We're keeping as many of their dealer relationships and staff in place, while keeping as many of their dealer relationships and staff in place. So that's good. Yeah, everybody's complaining about the tariffs right now in the AV industry.
Yeah, it's a bit of a thing. Although, I mean, the move toward having more U.S.-based production has been happening since before Trump was even elected. So
that's true.
That's not a completely
and
new
RBH
thing at
has they offer enough high. I say this because of the profit margins, but they offer enough high-end products that they can kind of afford to make everything here.
Well, I mean, a lot of it is like the cabinet work and that in particular. Yeah. I mean, there are raw materials that just have to be imported. They just literally cannot be mined within the United States. So raw material stuff is still going to have to involve trade in that. But the actual finished products or assembly of the products, that type of thing, moving more of that into the States, which makes sense.
Yeah. They actually had a cabinet that they were making. They were working with a designer who basically makes like kitchen countertops. Some sort of really weird Formica stuff that was super inert or whatever. They were going to make a big cabinet out of that, and they ended up their subcontractor fell through, and it like set their whole thing back like years. So
that can happen. But congratulations to Roger on his retirement.
Yeah,
well earned.
Absolutely.
And congratulations to Todd Stewart stepping in, taking the controlling stake and taking over the president and CEO roles. And best of luck to you. And I hope RBH continues to make excellent neutral speakers.
Is he internal or is he external?
He seems to be external. From the description that was given.
That's interesting. I'm very surprised about that.
Well, it seems as though he was involved with one of the subcontractors that RBH started to work with. Yeah. And then he was like, "Hey, this is a company I would." Well,
I hope they keep their brand intact. I hope it doesn't like start to Velodyne, if that makes sense to anybody.
I mean, they already do make headphones, so can't say, "Hey, if they make headphones, that's a sign of anything."
No, that's not what I mean. That they still have a core value, I think, that you can see in all of their products.
I mean, if they're keeping most of their same speaker designers and engineers, then hopefully they won't go too far afield.
If Shane Rich leaves, that's when I start to worry.
There you
honestly. Go. If the Stewart guy comes in and Shane Rich is like, "I'm out," like,
That's right.
All right, several people. Okay, this is comments. Several people let us know that the link Rob provided for his LG B7 OLED picture settings wasn't working, so Rob made a post on avrant.com. Which then promptly exceeded its bandwidth, as we tend to do at the end of each month. I don't understand.
I don't know what's going on. I have never had any clue what's going on over there.
Well, I mean, we've actually had people who know what they're looking at look at it and say, "Yeah, this should fix it," and then it doesn't. So
I mean, it seemed to be fixed for like a couple 3 months, and then it's back. This is the reason why episode 649, the audio-only version, did not post until today, July 1st.
Everything ready to go.
Oh, I know.
You told me that the bandwidth was ready to go. I had the post ready. I had the podcast episode was inserted. The SEO stuff was all done. All I had to do was put in the show notes. And by the time I got the show notes, the website was down.
Yep. In any case, if you were wanting my OLED picture settings, then they are now posted at avrant.com, right there near the top of the page at the time that we're recording this. It'll move down as we add more posts.
Yeah. Infinite Gary knows people are always asking for great demo material, especially scenes with amazing bass. He watched a Norwegian film called The Quake. That sounds good.
Yep.
You'd never be able to guess from the title, but there's an earthquake. And when that scene played, Gary says he literally exclaimed out loud. He's never heard anything quite like it before, so check it out if you think your subwoofers are up to the task. So
now there is a tagline saying the wave was only the beginning. So is this a sequel? Because it seems like maybe
there was a wave.
The wave was only the beginning.
No, the quake starts, and then that sends a tsunami out, right? So that's the wave.
Yes, in real
wave?
life, that's how it works. But I imagine in the movie land that there might have been a movie called The Wave first, and I don't know.
Then
I mean, if they say
quake
the wave was
followed it
only the
in?
beginning, that's the tagline. It sounds like this is a sequel
Science.
to something, a Norwegian
Nailed
movie
it.
called The Wave. I don't know.
I want to watch, speaking of foreign language things, I want to watch Dark, or The Dark,
Right.
whatever it's
On
called
Netflix?
on Netflix. I started it. The first episode, I saw the first episode. It was okay. But
It's in my list amongst about 100 other things I'll probably
Stranger
never get
Things
to.
is coming out in a couple of days.
Isn't it
3.
already out? Oh, no,
No.
July 4th, isn't it?
July
Something
4th.
like that.
Then, and I started watching The Haunting on
Of Hill House?
Hill House. That's it. With my son, the one who's in big trouble right now. So now I have to wait until he's no longer in trouble so I can finish watching this stupid thing. All right, let's get to these questions here. Brian. First up, Brian got his new bone-anchored hearing aid. Bone-anchored hearing aid. He says it's been awesome. He can enjoy stereo imaging and surround sound now. So that's awesome. That is
cool.
That is great. On our recommendation, you got a pair of NHT Super Zeros to use as surrounds, and those have been great. I don't remember searching them, but it sounds like something I would say. And he closely followed Rob's 12-step guide to setting up dual subwoofers. It took him a few days, but he wound up with one sub behind his TV and the other sub behind his couch. He played sweeps, and more sweeps, and he changed the phase knobs on one of his PB1000s little by little and listened in every seat over and over and over again. Since the auto EQ in his Onkyo 686 didn't get the job done, he wound up using a miniDSP for the final EQ. No matter what he did, he couldn't completely eliminate the small dip right at 89 Hertz, which is almost certainly a room interaction. But otherwise, he's very happy with the results. It's very linear response, and it's uniform across all of his seats. He has added tactile. He has added tactile feeling. Oh, the subs that we're giving him, not he hasn't added a tactile.
No.
Okay.
The tactile feeling is improved after all of this effort.
Yeah, and I guess we got a sub right behind his couch, but go on. And both of his subs are no longer at the front of the room. So we have a picture someplace, which you may not see, and there is a dip, and it is not a small dip, it is a dip at 89 hertz.
But it is a very narrow dip. Which is good news, because unless you are specifically playing like those 3 or 4 hertz in there,
really.
then
it's like
won't
90
affect.
to 88.
Yeah.
you get a little bit of silence right there.
So it's almost like a bit of a notch, which, I mean, all things considered, if this is the response you have more or less across all of your seats, that is pretty darn good.
That's fine. I could definitely live with that.
Oh, yes.
Which those big like U-shaped dips, that's what you don't want.
No.
All right, so here, those are just the statements. Here's the questions. He's got Polk Monitor series speakers up front. Now he wants to upgrade them. At the moment, his top candidates are a pair of Ascend CBM 170 SEs with a CMT 340 SE sensor. That combo perfectly fits his budget. What does that make his budget?
I'll add that up for you, but a little over $600, I think, $650, something like that.
So he sits 9 feet away, and now his subwoofers are in excellent shape, and he can't imagine he needs any more any more output or deeper extension. Right. The only question are the looks, and they're fine, but obviously not the prettiest. The Sierra ones are prettier and supposedly an upgrade, but if you got a pair of those, he'd have to hold off on getting a center right away. But then there are also the RBH Impression series and the CAF Q series to consider. But what do we think he should buy? $600. Those Sens are pretty good for $600.
Performance-wise, there is nothing to complain about. I still consider their tweeter a cut above pretty much everything else at the same price range. I mean, if it was the RBH Impression Elite,
that would be a bit better.
That'd be a real. But I mean, it's funny because you have the RBH Impression series, the regular Impression series, and then the Ascend SE series would be just a little bit more expensive than those, and then the Impression Elite series is a little bit more expensive than the Ascend SE. So it's almost as though the Ascends fit right in between. Price-wise. Yeah. And I mean, performance-wise, it's kind of that way too, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if you're not going to increase the budget for Impression Elites, I wouldn't. I mean, I like the RBH Impression series very much for their price, but if you can afford the Ascend SEs, I personally think that tweeter in them is a cut above the standard Impression series.
The Sierra ones are also very good speakers.
Yes, but he would only be able to afford
the two,
just a pair. He wouldn't be able to get the center at the same time. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, the good news is if you picked any of these, you are getting good speakers. So there's no bad choice.
This is a rabbit hole right here, though. I mean, this is a rabbit hole waiting. He's like, this is how much I'm comfortable spending, and we're saying, but if you just spend a little bit more, you know, I mean, the next thing you know, you're at Sierra 2s.
There are other alternatives too, which are also good speakers in this type of price range. So
the Sierra 1s can be upgraded to the Sierra 2s.
Yes, the Sierra 1s can later be upgraded to Sierra 2s. You would essentially only be keeping the cabinet. Both the tweeter, the woofer, and the crossover inside would all get replaced, but you can get a kit which is just the tweeter, the woofer, and the crossover, and you replace those, keeping the cabinet and the binding posts, and that's about it, and the grills. Right. But they can, the Sierra 1s can be upgraded later to Sierra 2s.
I don't know. I mean, I would at least keep that on the table as an option, and simply because of the ability to upgrade them later to the Sierra 2s if you really wanted to. Now you could very easily just go with the Ascends or the Impression Elites and just be fine. And if you decide later on to go with the Sierra 2s, you could. I don't know. To me, there's at least a bit of a compelling reason to look at those Sierras. If you're sitting in between the two speakers, anyways, you know. We've had many listeners say Phantom Centers work just fine for them.
Yes,
at least for the beginning, and you can get that Sierra Center, which is just the regular Sierra turned on its side, right?
It is, It's just to turn on its side with the tweeter rotated. We
degrees.
do know he has more than one seat, though, because he went through the whole thing of getting uniform bass across multiple seats. But
does he really care about those other seats? Yeah. As far as stereo imaging.
Typically, it's difficult to get a Phantom Center to work across all of your seats, though. That's pretty rare.
Well, it depends on how wide your speakers are placed.
Depends on how wide your seating is and how far apart your speakers are, but in general, to get that really good Phantom Center, you sort of need to be centered in between your two speakers. So, oh gosh, I mean, this is tough because I can wholeheartedly recommend those Ascend SE speakers, the ones he's already leaning towards. I can wholeheartedly recommend those. I think they're excellent. I agree, their looks are not stellar, but when the lights are out and you're watching a movie, just some plain black speakers are great because they're not going to draw any visual attention to themselves at all.
That's true. I know. Yes.
Oh, man. I mean, I have zero reason to tell you to get something other than the Ascend SEs. Since they do fit the budget and I think they perform extremely well. Then again, if you're like, you know what, I'm going to save some money and get the RBH Impression series, I'll be like, yeah, that's still very good speakers. So we're really not helping him on this. Golly, I'm more willing to say, I really like the SEs and go for them. But I mean, I agree with everything Tom said as well. Yeah, man, we're not helping. What about that KevQ series? They'd be great speakers too.
Honestly, I would say this: don't look at the Kev series because you don't need any more problems in your life right now. You don't need to make this decision any harder than it already is.
Oh yes, we don't need to add more options to which we could, but we don't.
And they're all the options would be very good.
Yes,
and so I guess
that's the best way to look at it. You can't really go wrong with anything that you've proposed. And I will say go ahead and get those Ascend SEs because they're excellent. I love them. I think they're great.
How much are the RBH SEs?
The Elites?
The Elites, yeah.
They're more. I have to go through a VPN to see the prices.
They're $240 each in the Phantom Black.
Yeah.
$240 each, so they would be just under.
I mean, it's $750 by the time you get three of them.
Yeah.
Yep, the Elites are definitely more expensive. They're very, very nice. Get the SEs, man. They fit your budget. They're wonderful. There you go.
So now that he's added the miniDSP and achieved really good bass response, would there be any value in getting a new receiver to replace his Onkyo 686? Would Odyssey Multi QXC32 still make a big difference, or can he just stick with his Onkyo? Big difference? No. I don't think so. There's lots of features that you could have that you do not have that you may want or you may need or you may enjoy once you have them. But as far, I mean, I don't know what he's using he could.
I mean, the Onkyo has like every streaming thing.
Oh, does
possible.
it? I don't even know what the 686 is. I don't know.
It's got like it connects to everything imaginable. That's been what Onkyo has done. They're like
the biggest difference you hear in room correction is going to be in the bass, and you're already doing that. So
that's right.
The upper stuff, I don't think that you're going to hear a whole lot there. So
yeah, no, honestly, I think if you were to replace your 686 with, say a Denon and Marantz, I mean, unless you're doing something that is now expanding to 11 speakers, right, which is something
right,
the
right, right.
686
But that's what I'm
cannot do.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if you were to go for like a X3400H or X3500H, which is also a 7-channel amplifier, just like your Onkyo, yeah, I don't think you'd hear enough of a difference to really feel that that's worthwhile. You have done the most important part, which is getting your bass handled, and that's it. Yeah.
And because of your non-standard bass, not standard, non-optimal bass subwoofer placement, you really wouldn't want to get rid of it. You wouldn't want Odyssey to do what your miniDSP is doing because you're doing it differently.
Yeah, you've done it all manually, and you'd have to do it manually again.
Well, honestly, you should be able to just keep all the settings exactly the same.
You should, yeah. You should just be able to tell Odyssey that you have one subwoofer and that output goes to your miniDSP without having changed any of your miniDSP settings. That's the way you would come
That's exactly the way that you would do it. And I can't look. I mean, usually I would say, oh well, you see you buy the receiver, then you can sell the miniDSP and you make some of your money. But you really wouldn't want to do that in this case. So yeah, unless you have more speakers you want to add, Atmos you want to add, or something else that some sort of pass through that this you can't do Dolby Vision or something like that. Which is, of course, I think the Onkyo.
Or you
can
just
do all those things.
have to have it work with Amazon's Assistant instead of the Google Assistant, because the Onkyos use the Google Assistant and the Denons and Marantzes use the Amazon Assistant. If you have to do that, it doesn't sound like that's the case. I don't see any reason to upgrade. Yeah.
All right, Rob, different Rob, not this Rob, though these could definitely be your words.
'Tis not
Rob says he got greedy and traded in his SVS PC 2000 for a PC 4000. But he didn't hear much, if any, improvement with a single PC 4000 in the same spot where his single PC 2000 used to be. In retrospect, he wishes he just bought a second PC 2000 instead. Mm-hmm. So can't you just send the PC 4000 back?
They're very accommodating there over at SVS. Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, he did trade in his existing PC 2000 to get the PC 4000, but if you tell them, you know what, I'd rather send back the PC 4000 and get two PC 2000s, they'll do that.
Yeah. And this is an example right here of when you've got enough bass for your room.
Yes.
And you get a bigger subwoofer, you're like, well, it could do so much. It could play so much louder. It could play lower. It can, it's got so much more headroom. How come I'm not hearing a difference? Because you only need it to play X loud, and your other one could play X loud, and this one plays X loud. And now, yes, you do technically get some more extension, but when you're talking the difference between a PC 2000 and a PC 4000, that extension is in the subsonic range.
The number of times that something's playing at 16 hertz instead of 17 hertz.
Yeah.
Because, your PC 2000 could play you some 17 hertz sounds, 18 hertz easily, and extending a little bit down to 17 hertz, whereas the PC 4000, I can get down to like 16 hertz, maybe 15 hertz, but the number of times that's actually happening.
And you're not going to literally hear it. You would feel it a little bit more. But technically, that's how you would experience it, but I doubt that you would notice it. That's why when I say if you could get a sub down to 20 hertz or maybe dip into 19 hertz or something like that, I don't care if it can now do 14.
Because that's the important part.
The important part is getting to 20. Yeah. All right. So anyways, but now that he's got the PC 4000, so of course he's thinking about adding a second one, which is ridiculous, but go on. But instead of getting a second PC 4000, what if he spent the same amount of money on the dual PC 2000s so that he has 3 subwoofers? Mm-hmm. Would one PC 4000 and 2 PC 2000s play nice together? I mean, they could. They would play together.
In your case, it sounds as though a single PC 2000 had all the output you needed. Yes, they absolutely could play nice together.
Between 17 hertz and 15 hertz, you're only going to have one sub. But no one cares.
We are really not concerned. To get 3 subs to work nicely together without a major trial and error headache, you would want to use the multi-sub optimizer software.
Right.
So we'll have a link for that at AVRant.com, but you can also just Google multi-sub optimizer software. For when you're going to more than 2 subwoofers, I would highly recommend using that. And to make that work, it is not only setting independent distance/time and volume levels for each sub, it is also creating independent EQs for each and every sub, which means you need a device like a miniDSP. So you would have to have a mini DSP, you'd have to have some kind of measurement microphone, and for that we would send you to our good friends over at Cross Spectrum Labs.
Right.
Very small upcharge for a fully calibrated and wonderfully accurate microphone. So get a UMic 1 from Cross Spectrum Labs, a mini DSP, and the free multi-sub optimizer software. Or trade in your PC 4000 for two PC 2000s.
Three subs are not. I mean, three subs are not a good idea. I mean, if you're going to buy two more PC 2000s, then send the PC 4000 back. And buy 4 PC 2000s and put them in all 4 of your corners.
You could do that.
That is the amount. That is the amount of money. Even number subwoofers we can deal with. Odd number subwoofers are harder to deal with. So
you really need the software to do it. I wouldn't want to do it manually at all.
Either have 2 PC 4000s, which is way overkill, or have 2 PC 2000s. Or if you really want overkill, get 4 PC 2000s,
right.
Which will not give you any more extension or volume because your room is already being filled with 1. But it will give you more uniformity across your seats. It will give you
excellent uniformity with 4 of them, yes.
Yeah. That is the epitome of first world problems right there. I've got so much sub, I don't know what to do with it. Yep. Jeff will be setting up his basement for both home theater and critical 2-channel listening. So he needs a sealed sub and a ported sub.
That is a joke, folks. Please don't take that literally.
Dude, I would be so easy to take out of context.
Yep.
Like you could put quotes around almost anything. Like you could just pick stuff out, and the sarcasm is lost.
Yep.
The context
Easily,
is
if this
lost.
was a transcript.
Oh,
that'd be super easy to happen. And you did say it. You said those words.
I did say it. Man.
Meaning.
It's a 16 by 24 foot space with 9 foot ceilings, but it has major ringing and echo at the moment. There are 2 large windows plus a full plate glass door. He wants to purchase acoustic panels, but he isn't sure what to get. He was planning on blackout curtains over the windows anyway, so could the curtains take care of his acoustic reflections over the 2 large windows and the glass door, or does he still need separate absorption panels for those areas? What should he get? Unless you have got the world's thickest, like you're literally hanging carpet from your ceiling, carpet with the backing material as well.
I mean, there can be very thick, heavy drapes that are bunched together to the point that, those actually do provide some, I mean, especially for knocking down something like a slap echo, which is the higher frequencies. Yes, that could be the case. But if it's more what we would expect normal, even blackout curtains, which of course are a bit heavier and thicker than just, really thin little curtains. It's not those, but still
my blackout curtains don't cut down any noise. Yeah. I mean, they are blackout. There's no doubt about it, but they are thicker than spandex, but not by a lot.
Right. They're just opaque. That's what makes them blackout. Yeah. No. So if you were to say I want to use my curtains to double as acoustic treatment, they would have to be really, really thick and really, really heavy and bunched together, which means a lot of curtain. Yeah. At which point it's more cost effective to just have a panel behind a regular curtain.
So I mean. Or not. I mean, it could be in front of the curtain as well. I mean, especially if it's in front of a plate glass door or in front of a window, you may not want to put it behind the curtain. You may want to put it in front of. But you got black curtains with a black acoustic panel and a black stand in front of it. Yeah, it's going to be kind of fine. But yes, you're going to want to get. So the rule of thumb is 1/3 of the room's volume or air. I mean, surface area. It is absorptive in some way. Hopefully your floor is already there. Maybe it's not. Maybe you don't.
It doesn't sound like it from describing this room as being so echoey right now. It's probably hard floors.
So literally what you want is as much absorption as you can possibly throw up on these walls, ceilings, and floors. So if you can get the area rug with a thick pattern underneath, that'll do something. If you can get acoustic panels for your walls, and Gick Acoustics or if you want to buy, Gick Acoustics is good. If you want to DIY, Gick Acoustics is a good place to get either kits
DIY materials,
materials or whatever you want.
And if it is a case where you're like, I would like to have a panel, say, in front of the door, or maybe the windows slide open or something like that, they have freestanding panels, which are very easy to just pick up and move out of the way when you need to, and then move them back into place.
Yeah, these things are really not heavy.
No,
Even the 4-inch thick ones are they're just not heavy.
Yeah, they have freestanding panels that'll stand anywhere you put them. So I mean, that's what I mean when I say it's actually more cost effective than getting really thick, heavy drapes that are bunched together. I mean, that can end up costing you well more than just buying some freestanding panels. So that's what I would do. Git can do that. I would also highly recommend Git gives out free acoustic advice.
They do.
Just fill out a form and they reply to you for free. It costs you nothing, and there's zero reason to not take advantage of that. So
right,
by
and
all means.
if it doesn't make sense to you or it doesn't sound right to you, then let's see if you probably look on the internet and find a podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions that can help you out with that. So you just send it to those people, whoever they might be, and they could probably help you out. Do subwoofers have different tonal characteristics, he asks. He asks because he tried an SB4000 but didn't like it, so he sent it back. But he didn't spend a ton of time on setup, so perhaps it could have sounded better. That said, he bought an REL S5, and he instantly liked the way it sounded better, so he kept that. So what's the deal? Hold on. Let me click on this S5, R5 thing.
Now, it's not an insignificant sub. This is their quote-unquote super high output 12-incher.
Okay.
So it is not the equivalent of a SB4000.
Right.
Most definitely not. Although in price it is.
Right.
In output and extension it is not.
So what's the... this thing is not opening. My computer is
it
doing
not?
too many things.
Too
my
many things
computer.
So yes, it is a 12-inch. It claims to be minus 6 dB at 20 hertz. So yeah, not sure exactly when that starts rolling off. Now let me see.
Around
it
28.
Looks like it's sealed. I'm pretty sure it's sealed, and he was coming from an SB4000. So yeah,
so it was probably a sealed sub.
It's a sealed, and it's 550 watts RMS. It does say so, not as much power as the SB4000. So. I mean, I do want to address first, can subs have different tonal characteristics? I wouldn't use the word tonal. Because it's not tone, but they can have, I mean, so we have the obvious differences of which one can play louder, that's obvious, and which one can play lower, that's obvious. But there is such a thing as some subwoofers that have slower or faster transient response, which is basically the signal says start or especially stop, and it doesn't actually stop for a little while.
There's those things, but I think can it have tonal characteristics? Can a sub change the tone of the input? And the answer to that is yes. It can.
Yeah, theoretically
if it's not if it wasn't built to be a linear flat sub from 120 hertz down to however low it can play. If it wasn't built that way, if it was built with the idea that everybody's got a notch at around 80 hertz, so we're going to have a bump there.
But it's just our perception, our human perception of tone tends to be frequencies higher than what subwoofers are playing. Those tend to be the fundamental frequency, and then it's all the harmonics above that our brain perceives as the tone of the sound. What the subwoofer is playing is almost like sine waves, because it's just the fundamentals primarily coming out of there, not very much in the way of harmonics. So that's why I say I wouldn't personally use the word tone, but there can be actual differences between subs, and
Absolutely.
Not just output and extension. It can be in the time domain, and it can be non-linearity. But
that's not what I think was happening here.
I don't think so either.
I think what's happening here is it's the SB4000 was able to play so much lower than this REL, and maybe depending on the size of your room and everything else that's gone. He told us the size of the room. He did.
Yeah, he did up there. Yep.
16 by 24 with 9.
24,
it's not a huge,
9.
It's not a ginormous room, but it is
pretty large though.
Pretty large.
No.
My guess is that there was stuff going on with the SB4000 that was activating things going down lower than this REL was able to do. My guess is that would be.
Yeah, because
as we get down lower and lower in frequencies, like people I like my little sub that I put over in my corner.
Right.
I've loved this sub forever. It never sounds bad. It always sounds good. Well, yeah, it rolls off at 35 hertz. It doesn't get to the point where it starts really shaking. Like I put this big sub that you told me to buy, and now I've got all these ringing things in my room. I'm like, yeah, it's because it's actually filling your room with bass.
The other part of it, though, is we don't know exactly how he did set things up. Like he said, he didn't spend a ton of time on setup, so we can probably assume with the SP4000, he took it out of the box, connected it to the subwoofer output, and kind of just set the volume dial, and maybe that was it. We don't know, has he set his front speakers to large, and he's attempting to cross things over passively using the subwoofer's crossover, because REL in their instructions will tell you to do that. Which is not how we would tell you to do things. And that could easily cause all kinds of interaction between what your, say, tower front speakers and your now added subwoofer are playing when your towers have been set to large, or it's set to a very low crossover frequency, and now the sub is only coming in below 40 hertz or something like that. There can be a multitude of setup things that we don't know. Not saying this is what Jeff did, but it's certainly possible.
Right.
And so that could easily have an effect on perceiving.
There's a lot of things that could be happening
tone
here.
or blend or whatever.
I'll be honest with you. The very first time I plugged in my very first subwoofer, I put the volume dial where they kind of told you, or like midway or something like that.
Midway
and
up.
It absolutely destroyed my room. Like I was afraid. I was afraid I was going to break, not the room I was going to break. And I was like, okay, this seems dangerous. I need to do something. And this was when I actually knew what I was doing. I was very. I was still an enthusiast. I hadn't been paid to do anything yet. I wasn't a professional, but I read enough that I knew what to expect, and I still was kind of blown away by it. And it took a while.
Yeah,
setting up a subwoofer is, I think, inarguably the hardest speaker in your system.
It is not plug and play. And many people want it to be, and I don't blame anybody for wanting it to be. I don't blame anybody for thinking, hey, everyone has said this sub is terrific, so I bought one, I put it in my room where it was convenient, I plugged it in, turned it on, did what the instructions said, and I didn't like the way it sounded. Yeah,
I think totally did what the instructions said is probably further than most people go.
Right.
I plugged it in, turned it on, filled with the volume knob a little bit, and then went with that. There could be the crossover on the back of that sub could have been set to something weird too.
Could have been a multitude. The SB4000 has a huge number of things that you can adjust on it. Right. Which again, it doesn't sound like he played with all of those things, but honestly, Jeff, I will certainly say the SB4000 is not just inherently a worse sounding sub than the REL S5. Absolutely not. But I will tell you that getting your bass to sound really, really nice on its own, and then the additional step of getting it to blend perfectly with all the rest of your speakers is not a plug and play thing at all.
Right. So I think it's important to kind of define where we're coming from with this. The SB4000 to us is a top of the line subwoofer that not only are you getting fantastic performance, but you're getting good looks and a lot of functionality that most subwoofers won't give you. You can spend less and get the same or better performance in a box that's bigger and uglier with less features. Fewer features. You can do that. But so when you say that I plugged the SB4000 in and I plugged this other sub, which the REL sub is fine. It is a fine sub. Sure. It is inferior, I think, pretty definitively.
In some ways, yeah. Clearly it just has a smaller driver, less amplifier power. Yeah. Those are just objective facts.
Objective facts. I think objectively, if you measurement-wise, if you looked at extension and stuff like that, the REL is going to be inferior to the SB4000. To say that I plugged the the SVS in, and I plugged this other one in, I prefer this other one. Normally, I would say whatever you prefer is great. In this case, I'm going to say you probably should have spent a little bit more time with the SVS, only because it is objectively a better subwoofer than the REL. So the fact that you like the REL and you're happy with it, and if you're looking for a reason to keep it, the reason is you like it, and that's fine. I don't really care if you
and I don't mind if someone says, I just don't want to go to the hassle, and this one doesn't give me a hassle, so I'm going to keep it. Yeah. You know what? Yeah. That's entirely valid.
That's fine too. Whatever floats your boat. If you want the best objective bass in your room, then get that SVS and call us. We'll tell you how to set it up. Carlton is moving into a new house. He has an unfinished space for a dedicated home theater in the future, but in the meantime, he has a more open media room. He followed the common advice during construction to run more wires than you might actually need. /use. It was easy and cheap, and so he had the media room wired for 13 speakers, traditional 7.2 plus 6 overhead speakers. Now the time has come to get his AV receiver, and he naturally thought of the 13-channel Denon X8500H, but the absolute lowest price he's found is just under $3,000, and he really doesn't want to spend that much. So he asks, is there any less expensive options for full 7.2.6 configuration? Cue Rob with buying 2 extra receivers to make this thing work. And yes, It would technically be cheaper. You could do it from accessories for less, for like probably $1,500 if you really tried.
3 receivers could do this. You would send the top front and top rear pre-outs. You would take the top front left and the top rear left pre-outs, and you would send those to the stereo inputs of a second receiver, and you would take the top front right and the top rear right pre-outs and send those to a third AV receiver, and then you would use those second and third AV receivers in Dolby Pro Logic mode, or it would still be Dolby Surround these days, but to create a center in between the top front and the top rear, which become your top middles. So that's you could do that, and it would definitely be cheaper than an X8500H. Also, all 6 of those overhead speakers would always be active, as opposed to only when an object is actually positioned in the top middle position, because it doesn't always play out of top middles. For example, in the Ultra HD Blu-ray release of Wonder Woman, they essentially created 4 fixed positions in the mix.
Right.
And so your top middles, if you have them with an X8500H, never play a thing when you play back Wonder Woman on Ultra HD Blu-ray. But if you use this upmixing version of it with 2 separate receivers handling it, they will extract a center when things pan from front to back, or vice versa. So you can even make an argument that it's better. However, it's 3 AV receivers.
That's right. In this case, it's more ridiculousness and the amount of space that you have to suck up for 3 receivers. 3 receivers is most of my rack.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
But I mean, the thing
I don't think I could get all the rest of my gear, and I only have like 2 sources that I use.
The additional receivers are only doing your overhead channels. How much do you care about EQing those overhead channels? Because you could maybe get the Marantz Slimline type of receiver.
That's true.
Because you only got to power 3 things, and I mean, the Slimlines only have standard mult EQ. They don't even have XT, so you might not even want to use that. But you know, there's ways to come at this. But yeah, that's the ridiculous answer. There it is. Anything else that can do 6 overheads is more expensive than an X8500H.
Yeah. So the Denon X4400H is only $750, and he already has an external amp he could use to expand that to 11 speakers. Is he really going to notice any worthwhile difference between 7.2.4 and 7.2.6? I'm going to say no.
Open media room, it doesn't sound like you have 3 rows of seating.
Yeah, I really don't see any reason for anybody to have that many overhead speakers, but
yeah,
I guarantee you, if you go to AVS Forum, you will find somebody that will die upon the hill of needing 6 overhead speakers, because it makes a substantive difference that is akin to a religious conversion.
There was the guy who went from 7.2.4 or 7.4.4 all the way up to like I think he got up to he had like 15 speakers on the floor level and 10 overhead, I think, at some point. And then he was like he pared it back down to 9.4.6. That's where he landed.
Right.
He's like 9.4.6. That is the optimal amount, and that was only a single roller seats, and so absolutely someone like that will tell you that could be what it's worth it. But honestly, unless you have 3 rows of seats, it's so much less expensive. You already own the amp. I'm like, yeah, $750 compared to $3,000.
Top fronts, top rears.
Top fronts, top rears, man. I would, in a heartbeat, recommend that to you.
So we installed a second zone with only 2 in-ceiling speakers. He'd like to be able to have the sound that's playing in the media room also coming out of his 2-speaker second zone. But he knows that would mean limiting the media room to 2-channel source signals, which he obviously doesn't want to do. He knows he could get a Yamaha receiver and use MusicCast, but he has trepidations about using YPOW instead of Odyssey. And there aren't any 13-speaker options from Yamaha.
Which, yeah, although to get a 11-speaker option from Yamaha, you have to get their flagship. So,
yeah, I know. Yeah, Yamaha's a little behind the curve on the number.
A little bit on that part, yeah.
He found a device from AV Pro Edge that says it can take any HDMI signals and pass them onto one of his HDMI outputs while down mixing any type of audio to channel on its second HDMI output. This seems like an ideal solution, but the box costs $600.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other solution we can suggest that doesn't cost as much?
Yes.
I mean, you could just use the receiver he's talking about has a Zone 2 HDMI output.
It has a Zone 2 HDMI output on the X4400H. You send that to another cheap receiver. Now, you would want
You're now up to 4 receivers, son. Four receivers.
If you add the 2 receivers to make 6 overheads, which we're not telling you to do, but I mean, the thing is, you could go ahead and get the X4400H now, and if you're like, you know what? I've got those 2 top middles up there. You can add the 2 other receivers later. You could always do that. So there's almost zero downside to getting
a receiver and a stack of slim lines.
But for your Zone 2, you would just feed the Zone 2 HDMI output of your Denon. You would set both the main zone and Zone 2 to the same source, which you can do. Now, you would have to make sure that the receiver that is powering your Zone 2 is technically capable of accepting and decoding all the same signal types as the X4400H.
But if you got anything from Accessories for Less, I mean, as long as you'd buy anything that was 1,000 years old, you'd be fine.
I mean, it doesn't have to do 11 speaker Atmos. It just has to be able to do Atmos. It doesn't have to do 11 speaker DTSX. It just has to do DTSX. As long as it can do that, it can decode the very same signal that's playing in the main zone. And if you tell it, I only have 2 speakers, it will then down mix that signal. But it's doing the full decoding of the exact same signal, and then it's down mixing exactly like this AV Pro Edge device is doing, except for a lot less money because it's just another AV receiver and it can be an inexpensive one. But make sure it's a 7-channel one that does have Atmos and DTSX decoding. That's all.
Right. Alex says he despises snake oil audio claims and he's skeptical of most audiophile advice, but he owns a set of Outlaw Audio LCR speakers, the older and now discontinued design from 2008. They are a sealed 2-way design with several switches on the back for boundary compensation, treble adjustment, and vertical or horizontal placement with 2 completely separate crossovers. They allow for biamping, and since he has an Emotiva XPA2 amplifier connected to a Denon receiver, he decided to give biamping a try with the Emotiva powering the low section and Denon powering the high section. He is a huge difference, truly night and day sort of difference, and biamping these speakers this way seems to have added 100% to their clarity. Are these Outlaw speakers just special in some way? What is going on here?
I have multiple theories.
There's so many things that could be going on. Did you take the little bars off?
The little jumpers. I
Did
know.
You take the
when
bars
you're
off?
saying 100% of the clarity, I'm like, were those little jumpers removed this whole time and you had it plugged into the bottom binding post, and so you literally have not been hearing treble until now? Because it could
that
be.
would make 100% difference for sure.
Yes.
So, okay, just so you understand that speakers that have that are biampable, triampable, or quad ampable, it sometimes happens. They'll have 2 sets of binding posts, or 4 up to 4 sets of binding posts. They're quad, but if they're biampable, they'll have 2 sets of binding posts. They'll have 2 reds and 2 blacks.
Mm-hmm.
The top red, usually the top red and black, go to the treble or the high end. The tweeter, the low, the bottom 2, the red and black, goes to the low one. But in between, they'll have a copper jumper.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll have a wire, but usually it's just like a little piece of metal that fits in between the 2 binding posts and locks down there, and then basically connecting everything together to make it a single speaker with
so that whether you plug your speaker wire into the top pair of binding posts or the bottom pair of binding posts, it doesn't matter, because the 2 red binding posts are electrically connected by that jumper, and the 2 black binding posts are electrically connected by that jumper, so it doesn't matter where you could plug into the bottom red one and the top black one. It wouldn't matter. They're all connected.
When he first got the speakers, if for some reason he took those off, and then because he didn't know what those were, or were confused or whatever, which I don't think he would be, but maybe they fell off or something. They didn't come with it. Who knows?
Well, the other thing is, if you get speakers or AV receivers in Europe, they have the binding posts plugged, because by law, because the electrical prongs will fit in there from regular electrical devices, they plug those so many times, people do have to unscrew their binding posts just to get banana plugs to work, and it's easy for the jumpers to fall out at that point.
Right. So if those have fallen out or aren't in use, then suddenly you biamp them, then meaning that you connect a amplifier. He's saying the amplifier to the top
No, he was connecting the external Emotiva amplifier to power the woofers, the bottom.
The woofers, okay.
And he's using the Denon's own speaker binding post to power the treble.
Right.
I mean, to me, that seems like, I mean, I know it's pedantic, and Alex might be offended at this point, saying, of course, I didn't do that, but we've got to check, because that would completely explain. I mean, you're saying this is a complete, total night and day difference, 100% better clarity. I'm like, you might just not have had any trouble before, and that can easily be explained by the jumpers not being there now.
So what he said what amp he has, right? The SPA2, that doesn't have volume control on it, so that can't be it. Yeah, I mean, that would make a difference. I mean, moving things around as you're changing the binding posts, changing the setup, could make a difference there.
Now, the other thing is, though, because that XPA2 does not have its own gain knobs.
That's what I'm kind of thinking, is that there's...
you could have mismatched gain right now. I mean, if you change the trim level inside the AV receiver, that is going to affect both the pre-outs that are feeding the Emotiva amplifier and the speaker binding posts built into the Denon. It will affect both of those, but you're getting whatever gain is happening on the Emotiva XPA1, and you can't control that independent of the gain that is coming out of the Denon's own binding post. There could easily be a mismatch right now between your treble and bass, which for whatever reason you're finding has produced greater clarity.
So this is what I'm going to suggest you do. If this might be the case, take the Emotiva and power one speaker with it.
That's right. Yeah,
and
power both the high and low
Yeah.
portions of the speaker just with the Emotiva.
And unplug everything else, play something through that. Then then unplug the high end or whatever it is, and then plug that into the Denon and see if you see that massive difference again. If you do, I think it's gain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It could easily be a difference in gain between the external amplifier and the internal amplifier.
Just a couple of dB on the tweeter, it's going to make that a completely different speaker.
Yes. Now, in addition to that, this speaker has a whole bunch of switches that you can adjust things on it. We don't know if any of those were changed. We would assume, if this is a scientific experiment, that you wouldn't have, because you want to limit your variables, but who knows? Sometimes people change things. Inadvertently, you might change something. But in addition to that, it does have two completely separate crossovers built in. If you flick it to, this is a horizontal placement, it uses one crossover. If you flick it to, I'm using this vertically, it has a different crossover. I don't know if it is possible via a mechanical or electrical error inside, because what's happening with we would call this a passive bi-amp, which is that the crossover of this speaker is always active. You have not externalized the crossover of the speaker. Something we would call an active bi-amp is when you have externalized the crossover of the speaker as well, so that the woofer is truly only being sent low frequencies and the tweeter is truly only being sent high frequencies. Those have been separated before the amplifier stage, and then you have two separate amplifiers. But this is not the case. This is passive bi-amping, where the full frequency range signal is being sent to the woofer, and the full frequency range signal is being sent through a different amplifier, but still the full frequency range is being sent to the tweeter, and the crossover inside the speaker is taking care of rolling off the bottom of the tweeter and rolling off the top of the woofer. I'm not saying this is the case, but it is not completely inconceivable that when you have a actual physical switch to move between two crossovers, that something could have gone a little hinky in the crossover. I don't think that's the case. I think it's probably the gain if it isn't the
those to me are jumpers. The thing that jumped out at me was the binding, the jumpers, and possible gain differences between the Denon and the Emotiva. We're about to get the question about amplifier gain coming up next anyways. But the fact that the Emotiva doesn't, and most amps don't, but most people assume that if you're going to buy amp or whatever, you're using the same amplifier.
Right.
You buy a bunch of amps to power your speakers, and then you use those amps to do it. So the gain is all the same. Or you're bi-amping with your Denon itself.
The other way to think of it is that when you have an external amplifier that does not have a gain adjustment, you have now created an equalizer.
Yeah.
It is now boosting or lowering the frequencies that it is driving in the woofer section, in your case. And the treble section is getting a different amount of signal amplitude being powered by the Denon's
Right.
built-in
It's just like
amplifiers.
it's like those. Remember those sliders used to have on those things. It's like taking all the treble ones and just moving them up. A couple dB,
or vice versa, whatever the case may be. But you have this. You've essentially created an EQ. One section is now louder than the other, very likely.
Yeah. All right, Mark. Mark has a B&K AV500 5-channel amp. He'll be using it to power some of his ELAC speakers along with the Zen X4500H in the Atmos setup. Wow. I don't really... Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, it's fine. I don't know how far away he's sitting, so maybe that's why. But usually ELAC speakers and amplifiers, things I say at the same time. The B&K amp has its own level adjustment knobs for each of the channels. Where should those be set? All the way up? Generally speaking, yes. In amplifiers, you want to turn them all the way up and then let the trim level on the receiver do the job. There can be cases where there's if you go up too high, it's encourages the amplifier or allows the amplifier to clip.
Right.
I would not know if that was the case in this amplifier, but I would do 5 seconds of Googling to see if anybody complained that they turned it all the way up and suddenly things started to crackle.
I mean, the other thing I tend to do when I have an external amplifier that does have its own gain knobs is I will have everything connected, but nothing playing.
Right.
So the system is on and connected, but just sitting idle. And I will turn the gain of the external amplifier all the way up and listen for how loud does the hiss get coming out of the tweeters of my speakers. I get up pretty
signal to noise ratio.
Yeah, there. I get up fairly close, but sometimes that hiss gets too loud. I mean, loud to the point that I would be able to hear it sitting at my seat. When there's a quiet section in the movie or there's nothing playing, I'd be able to hear the hiss coming from my tweeters. I don't want that, and I'm perfectly willing to turn the gain knob down a little bit on the external amp until the hiss is either gone or at a very low, reasonable level that I won't be noticing from my seat. So that's kind of, but the advice would be to start with it all the way up, because if it works perfectly fine all the way up, then yeah, that's where it should be. That means you are maximizing the possible amount of wattage that amplifier could deliver. You're not limiting it.
I wouldn't expect that B&K would have many hiss-related issues.
I wouldn't expect it, but do that little test. Doesn't take much time.
Chris just moved to Florida, and he bought a house with a garage that is already converted and mostly finished into a living space. He's got permission to use it as a home theater. It's roughly 20 by 18 by 8.5. The north wall is one of the 20-foot walls, and it's blank. The west wall, okay, I have to think.
To the left.
I got it. Has the door to the house and exposed water heater in the southwest corner. The south wall is where the garage entrance used to be. Okay, and now that's closed off, and there's just a door leading outside. And the east wall has 2 windows. All right.
So we've gone around the room counterclockwise.
Oh, this looks nice.
Doesn't it, though?
It does.
So we're showing some images on YouTube.
We've hanging out in the middle of the room. But other than that, it's real nice.
we've got a diagram to show the overall layout. It's pretty rectangular and square. But he has this hot water heater in the southwest corner that's still exposed. I'm not sure if he's got plans to close that in, but we'll talk about that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Did I scroll past anything that was important? No, I already read all that. All right. So the west wall, the one with the door to the house and the exposed water heater, will have storage racks and a small freezer. So he's thinking he would just make that his back wall, so he end up facing the east wall with its 2 windows, making the room 20 feet long and 18 feet wide. He's going to install a ductless mini split air conditioner on the south wall. I'm getting all confused now, with the exterior door. Is that the orientation we would go with? Should he face some other direction or alter the room in some way that he hasn't thought of? Let me look back up here at this drawing here. So there's the water
my
heater.
one thought is, could we do something to that west wall where the hot water heater and you're going to have a freezer, which, I mean, a freezer makes some noise no matter what you do. Could we, perhaps construct some kind of partition wall? I'm not talking about completely closing it in, but, basically you come through the door that goes into the house, you've got some kind of area that you can walk through to go to the freezer and the hot water tank, but then there's sort of a partition wall between the hot water tank and freezer and the rest of the room. It's not going to be completely soundproof because you'll still have an opening at the front where the entrance to, the doorway into the house is, but having that partition wall will knock down some of that ambient noise created by the hot water heater and the freezer especially. That would kind of shrink that 20-foot dimension of this room, because now you'd have that being at least 3 feet wide, right? But I mean, that was my one thought. Do you want to just have this exposed hot water heater and this freezer humming away at the back of the room all the time?
Right.
Any
Let's
thoughts?
pretend that he can't do that, because I'm guessing the answer to that question is no.
Yeah. I mean, even if you did, I would probably still keep things facing the way you described. Even if you did put up that partition wall, I mean, I guess you could face the blank north wall at that point, but there's not a tremendous reason to.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at that water heater and seeing if there's some way we can close it in, but we can't, because on either side.
I mean, not entirely. No.
Yeah, I was thinking false wall in that kind of basically it went right in front of the
oh, you mean
water
having
heater
the
there.
screen on the hot water side?
Yeah,
but then it would be a false wall.
Yeah, but that's different than what
you
talking
wouldn't.
about.
Well, I mean, that's creating a partition like I'm suggesting too, though, right? Instead of making it acoustically transparent, you're putting up a partition, putting your screen on top of that. Your speakers would still be in front of that wall, right? Not behind it.
No, I was thinking behind it. That's the whole
Behind
point
it?
of
So you'd be acoustically transparent, so all the noise from the freezer and the hot water heater is still going to come through.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of defeats the purpose.
Well, that wasn't what the purpose was. Purpose
was visual.
Visually.
Visual, not audio. Oh.
Not audio. I wasn't,
Okay. I was thinking
I agree. Okay, so the putting the stuff at the back of the room is problematic in a couple of ways. What Rob's talking about with the noise is certainly something to consider. You're not going to be able to, unless you enclose that space in some way so that you can keep the sound away from you, which logistically might be impossible, financially might be impossible, and there may be some other considerations like access to the water heater, you know, that you just don't want to deal with. The problem being is that in a room like this, you're either going to want to sit in front of or behind the midpoint of the room. A lot of times we sit behind the midpoint of the room so we can have a nice big screen and get some space between us and our speakers so that we have more options for speaker placement. But if you put this on the east wall, which is where the two windows are, and the water heater stuff's behind you, then you're sitting behind it, which means you're actually sitting closer to the freezer and the hot water heater.
If you're behind the midpoint, yeah. I mean, this is a 20-foot long room, so conceivably he could sit in front of the midpoint. He could be 9 feet from the wall with the windows.
But then you're starting to think of, do I really need a projection screen if I'm going to be sitting this close to this? And you start looking at 65 to 75-inch OLEDs instead, which can happen. Which can happen, but in some ways can be better or worse or whatever. So these are all considerations to kind of come up with.
Yeah, I mean,
the freezer I think is going to be a bigger problem.
Yeah.
The water heater does make noise. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I mean, just physically, it's pumping water in and out, and it depends on what kind you have. If it's gas, you've got to deal with that too, right?
Yeah. If this were my setup, I'd be strongly considering putting up some kind of partition wall in front of where the hot water heater and the freezer will be. That'll knock down some of the noise. Not completely eliminate it. It'll still be open, but knock down some. Now, at that point, the 20-foot dimension would be reduced by at least 3 feet, probably more like 4. So now you're dealing with maybe a 16-foot wide and 18-foot long, at which point, it might make more sense to face that blank north wall. Yeah. Have the partition wall that you've put up on your left now, have your windows on your right, and have the exterior door behind you. That could work very nicely.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's...
I mean, either way, the dimensions aren't changing significantly.
Right. And the upside, too, is that when you put your PC-2000s in here, they're going to go right along with your water heater. You got that, too. Okay. He plans to paint the walls and ceiling in Sherwin-Williams gray and hang blackout curtains over the windows on the east wall and a small window in the exterior door on the south wall. He'll put a rug up front between the seats and the display. He's open to making his own absorption panels. Do we think that will cover his room acoustics needs? It will certainly help. It depends on how many panels you're putting. If you're planning on making 2, it's not enough. If you're planning on making
DIY panels, you certainly have the option to make as many as you need.
Yeah. So we could get you there with that. So he's planning to sit somewhere in the range of 8 to 10 feet from his display. So he's going to sit in front of. So there's that.
Yeah.
10 is not great, but
Not if it's 20 feet long, but if you've put in this partition wall, now you've changed it, or if you're facing the north wall now, then that would be fine.
So, like I just said, he's torn between getting a large 85-inch flat panel or projector and a screen. Is there an 85-inch OLED he could get? Could he go for an 85-inch Sony X900F? Isn't that what you have, an X900?
No, I have a Z9D.
Z9D, okay. Or should he stick with his inclination and go with the Epson 5050 UB and a 110-inch silver ticket screen? Well, it kind of depends on what you like as far as your field of view. Mm-hmm. There's that to consider. I'm 9 feet away, 110 inches. That's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty big, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, so, no, I mean, 10 feet away from a 110-inch screen is very, very nice.
Yeah.
If you're facing that north wall, you have 8 feet behind you, 10 feet in front of you, an 110-inch screen, and then you put up a partition wall beside you, so now your room is 16 feet wide. That all works pretty darn nicely. You said you're going to put blackout curtains over all the windows and that, and you're going to have a split air conditioner system in here to keep it cooler. So all of that sounds very reasonable to me. Can you get an 85-inch OLED? No. Theoretically, you could get an 88-inch 8K OLED. Do you have $30,000 to spend on an 88-inch 8K OLED?
That partition wall is starting to look a lot more affordable.
Kind of guessing that isn't really considered reasonable.
That's
so
not usually our audience. Is the 30 grand
The
guys.
77-inch OLED is $7,000. I'm still thinking, I mean, compared to a 5050 UB and a silver ticket screen, still way more expensive. You could buy 3 of those Epsons and silver ticket screens for one 77-inch OLED. So,
and honestly, if he's looking at a split level, whatever it's called, AC, that's not quiet either. So
it is not silent. It is absolutely not silent. It's
us
quieter.
Us worrying about noise in this room is probably,
Yeah, he's going to have some noise. But I mean,
the thing is,
noise
no matter what.
The more you can reduce, you still are reducing. It's not as though you just say, because I will have some noise, I am going to allow all the noise. You can still reduce it.
Yeah. And then Rob's going to start talking about how you can use that ductless system or whatever to blow into the water heater
cool off the room beside you, and then that would be a whole bunch of construction that I don't think is in the cards. No, I'm leaning very strongly towards the projector in this setup. I think that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, I think even if you do the turn the room and go 18.5 feet deep, whatever it is, you still end up with that 110-inch screen.
Absolutely.
He's got an Andrew Jones Pioneer Andrew Jones towers and center, plus some Energy Take Classic speakers, a single Outlaw Audio LFM1 sub made by HAC, and a Denon X2000 receiver. He's got a Blu-ray player, a Plex server, and was considering a Roku 4K. Is there anything he simply must upgrade right away? Will the Energy Take Classic satellites do all right as surround and surround back speakers for the time being? Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
No, the Pioneer Andrew Jones towers and center, very nice speakers. The Energy Take Classics, great choice.
Outlaw Audio LFM1 sub, perfectly serviceable sub.
That's that's a good 500-watt 12-incher down-firing sub for this room size. Totally reasonable. The one thing I will say, of course, and he's aware of this, the X2000 is not going to pass through all your 4K HDR signals.
That's true.
So if you are considering an Epson 5050 and you're going to be getting a Roku 4K, I would recommend to you an Apple TV 4K, which I also know he was considering. So I'm not saying anything that wasn't already on his mind, but I would recommend an Apple TV 4K. And if you do that, if you're going to pass the video signals through your receiver, you're going to need to upgrade the receiver.
Right. So he asked, what's a good subwoofer option to match his LFM1 since that model is discontinued now? I'm sure Shu makes a different sub that they aren't making for Outlaw that will match that just fine. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you could go with Outlaw is still selling subs, and the, Ultra X12, which goes for $679. So that's more, I know,
Ultra
than the LFM1.
X. That's better than regular X.
But
that's the Ultra X.
That's quite a comparable model to what you already have.
Right.
Little bit physically larger, but quite comparable driver size, amplifier size. HSU Shu does also have a sister model, but Shu's model now is forward firing. It's not a down firing design like your LFM1. I don't know if that makes any difference to you, but the VTF2 MK5, the Mark V of the VTF2, is less expensive. It's $540 plus $60-something in shipping, but it's less expensive than Outlaws, and output and extension-wise would be a near perfect match for your LFM1. So easily one of those.
So whatever display ends up getting, it'll be 4K with HDR. or at least 4K compatible. So if he wants to send those signals through his AV receiver, he's going to need a new one. He's eyeing the Denon X4500H from Accessories for Less, along with potentially putting some monoprice caliber in-ceiling speakers with their plastic backer boxes into the ceiling for Atmos. Anything we would change about that plan? I mean, no, technically I would not. I think those are fine.
That's a very, very reasonable plan.
That's a very reasonable plan. On ceiling speakers, I think, in a room that's like that, that's basically a
converted garage.
I think makes a little bit more sense because you can take them down and take them with you. You're not cutting holes in the ceiling.
I mean, you're shopping at Accessories for Less already. You could get those Boston Acoustics Soundwear 4.5s.
Yeah.
Super
to me,
easy
that
to
makes
mount.
a little bit more sense in this application, only because it's a converted garage.
Yeah.
Converted garage is, who knows what's the next person who lives in this house going to.
Right.
Is this your forever house? Then ignore me. But if it's not your forever house, then,
I mean, those are not drastically increasing the price to get the Soundwear 4.5s. Very easy to mount. And you have an 8.5-foot ceiling, so I'm not worried about the ceiling height on those and having them hanging down a little bit either. So yeah, I can get on board with that, but that's a great choice of receiver, and you're already shopping at Accessories for Less, so add 2 pairs of the Boston Soundwares.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Jim is helping a friend of his. No matter what Jim says, this friend wants their couch against the back wall, which means they're no longer your friend, Jim.
Wow. I wouldn't go
Burn that bridge, Jim. Salt the ground upon where this person sleeps. They are dead to you, as is their family.
Wow. Man, oh man.
Happy 4th of July, friend.
Write that in a transcript, folks. Take it out of context. Quoted Tom Andrew. Oh, dear.
Never again shall he pass through your doorstep unmolested. This man is no longer welcome in your home. Sorry. Okay, anyways. Jim is helping a friend of his. No matter what Jim says, his friend wants their couch against the back wall, which means they're sitting 20 feet away from a 75-inch TV, which looks like so small from as far away as they are.
That is the life they have chosen to lead.
Yeah, it's just... They probably bury people in their backyard, Jim. There are 2 speakers mounted in the ceiling about 10 feet from the... I am very tired.
Yeah.
This is unlikely to get any better as this question goes on. This is unlikely to change in tenor or tone for at least the rest of this. So just everybody buckle up. Tom's going to be going on a rant. Poor Jim's friend is in for it. There are 2 speakers mounted in the ceiling about 10 feet from the front wall. So 10 feet in front of them from where they're sitting, or 9 feet in front of their faces. Right. Those are currently wired as surround speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the surround speakers are about 9 feet in front of the seats right now. Running wires all the way to the back of the room would require opening and then patching the drywall. Jim's friend doesn't want to do that, so looking for a wireless solution. The receiver is a Marantz SR6013. He has electrical outlets at the back of the room, so plugging in amplifiers for surround speakers is not a problem. What will work in this situation without being too huge or expensive? Well, there's lots of wireless speaker transmitters. I mean...
Right, the ones that are just RCA connections.
Yeah.
You'd have a transmitter receiver, and then you'd have to have another separate amplifier.
Just an itty bitty amp. It doesn't have to be
like a Class
big.
D amplifier.
Yeah,
one of those.
It doesn't have to be big.
That is certainly one way to do it. I like the Amphony system though, because Amphony simplifies it a little bit.
They have an amplifier built in, right?
Yep. So what they've got, Amphony sells their Model 1800. It goes for $200. But what that gives you is a single stereo transmitter. So you would plug the transmitter. Now, one nice thing about these Amphonies is that the transmitter can actually take the signal either from a preamp input, which your SR or your friend's SR6013 could certainly supply. So it can take a preamp signal, or it can take a speaker level signal, a speaker wire signal, which is really nice for people who have lower end AV receivers that don't have pre-outs, but they still want to create wireless surround speakers. That's a challenge for those normal RCA receiver transmitter things. So the Amphonies,
you have a low end receiver. You're not going to have those pre-outs. When you said Marantz, we both knew right away they got pre-outs, because that's one of Marantz's things. They always have the pre-outs.
But still, I still like this Amphony. And so you get this stereo transmitter. That's easy to plug in either way. And then they give you 2 mono amplifiers, wireless receiving units that have amplifiers built in. And so those will just have a speaker wire output. and you connect those to your two separate surround speakers. The reason I like that is because sometimes you have a good distance between your two surround speakers at the back of the room, and if they were sharing one stereo amplifier, then you still have to traipse wires, potentially across.
Well, clearly you just put it behind the couch. Yeah, there's lots of space back there.
You never know. Maybe there's openings or something that we're not considering. So when you have two mono amplifiers, you just sit one next to each speaker. Get a couple of
those Boston Soundware little cube thingies and put them on the end tables on either side of that couch, and you're good to go.
Yeah, so I would absolutely recommend that to you. The Amphony Model 1800, $200.
And people are like, oh my God, surround speakers 9 feet in front of you. That must sound awful. Surround speakers 3 feet in front of you sound awful. So 9 feet doesn't make any difference as far as I'm concerned. I've been in lots of theaters where the surround speakers are in front of you, and it doesn't just kill it. It just makes it doesn't make any sense. It's all one big blah sound.
It's not coming.
So this
will
make sonically for these people who don't deserve the time of day that you were giving them. This will make a huge difference. They will finally have surround sound, which is great. They will love you for this, so that's great. And then you can burn their house down, salt the ground upon which it stands, because
nothing shall ever grow again.
Nothing shall ever grow again in this cursed place where surround sound was defiled by the uninitiated. Whatever. I'm sure they're very nice people. They're probably like, oh my goodness, this band's so angry.
I should mention about those that Amphony system.
Yeah.
It does complicate things a bit because, of course, you have your master volume dial, which turns the whole system up and down. You have your speaker trim levels built into the AV receiver. Then there is a volume dial on the front of the transmitter, and there are volume dials on each of the amplifiers.
Draw lines, dude. Get like a little Sharpie and draw a line, and then
so
tape everything down.
You have 4 potential places to change your volume, although, of course, the master volume is everything. So my advice is to kind of work backwards a bit. Similar thing, hook up those wireless amplifiers to your speakers, turn the volume knob on that amplifier up until the hiss gets too loud, all right? And then
or at all loud, because you're going to be sitting real close.
At all loud, yeah. So then back down that, and now you have the volume on the amplifier itself as high as is reasonable. I would start with that.
Right.
Then, in your AV receiver, I would, first of all, make sure that you turn the volume on the transmitter of the Amphony way down to start, because we're going to turn the master volume on your AV receiver to full reference volume, to 0 dB. You're going to set the trim levels for the surround channels to their default 0 dB position, and then we're going to gradually turn the volume dial on the transmitter up until you get 75 dB. So that's kind of the way I would recommend coming at setting the volume levels on these things, because now you got multiple places to change the volume.
All right, Jonathan. Jonathan has finished his home theater sports lounge earlier this year before he discovered AVRant. So he's a big fan of the podcast now and wishes he had found this before finishing his room, which he has named the what? The Seaden?
The Seaden, I believe. Yes.
Does his last name start with an S? Because that would explain
I don't think so.
The Seaden. All right, whatever.
His
house is split. The Seaden, why would you? It's Seaden for those of you who are wondering what we're saying. That's what it is. The Seaden is in the lower level. It's a split level house, like a split house. The Seaden is a lower level with a door on the right side that opens out into the patio. The room is roughly 17 feet wide, 14 feet long, 8 feet high. But the back wall has a 6-foot opening to the stairs that lead up to the upper portion of the split. So there are no doors, so that back left corner is open to everything. He installed 65-inch Sony X900F plus 2 additional 32-inch Panasonic TVs so that he can have 3 football games all playing at the same time. Each TV has its own separate DirecTV box. He has a single row of 4 recliner seats, love seat in the middle. That's about 9 feet from the main TV. 9 feet from a 65-inch? Is that right? Okay. His sound system uses a Denon X4400H powering 3 Ascend CMT 340 SE speakers plus up front, plus a pair of Wavecrest bookshelf surrounds. Wavecrest speakers are designed by David Famerkamp from Ascent, as well as 1 pair of Polk in-ceiling Atmos speakers and a single rhythmic LV12F sub in the front right corner. All right, so no center channel, or did I miss the center?
Oh, no, he's got center because he got 3 of the CMT 340s.
Oh, 3 of them. Okay, yeah, got it.
Left, rights on their pedestal stands, so those look like towers. Anyone who's like, how come Ascend doesn't sell towers in the SE series? Well, those perform like towers, and they look like towers if you get the matching pedestal stands, and then he's got his center wall mounted right below his 65-inch TV. He's got his 12-inch ported rhythmic sub in the front right-hand corner next to the door that he's covered over. So he's blacked out this room more or less. Little bit of light leaking through there from the window on the right, but more or less cover that up. And then, some very nice theater seats reclining with, I believe those are power headrest in those models. And he's got a couple of bar stools behind those, I guess, if he has more people coming over, but mostly it's the 4 seats.
All right. Overall, he's quite happy with the setup, but he isn't blown away by the bass. And listening to us, he's definitely concerned about the opening at the back of the room and only having a single sub. He pre-wired for a second sub in the rear left corner, just beside the stairway entrance. A second rhythmic would mostly fit, although it would stick out just a little into the entrance. The bass is noticeably louder in the far right seat, and noticeably quieter in the far left seat. So what we suggest, a door.
A door would really be the thing.
A door would make it so that this sub actually fills the space pretty nicely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I'm looking at this opening.
Do you know how much cheaper a door is than a subwoofer? Doors are installed $250 if you like.
Right. I mean, this would have to be a double door in his 6-foot opening. Right. I'm looking at it. What's on the other side of this 6-foot opening, and I don't know if there's more to the left and the right. We can see the stairway clearly in the photo.
It seems like there's a door to the right of that stairway, too. It looks like a knob right there.
Yeah, I think that maybe goes into a closet space, perhaps, or something like that. But it's a little bit tough to tell. So, I mean, ideally, you would just have maybe some French doors, right? You could have French doors with, glass that you can see through so that visually you aren't, destroying the look of this place. You're looking from the upper level down into this room. You could still have glass French doors. Make sure they're not ones that are, super chintzy and going to rattle. But there's not much reason. You've got enough room that they could swing open into this theater, right? So I don't see a ton of reason why you couldn't possibly install some glass French doors here and close this room off. Now, will that give you uniform bass across your seats? Probably not. You probably still will want a second sub, and I'm going to easily recommend to you already wired for that rear left corner, which is a perfectly reasonable placement when you have a front right corner sub, as you already do. How about a PC 2000 cylinder, which will fit into that corner real nicely, and if somebody bangs into it, well, it's a soft round thing instead of a hard, sharp, cube thing.
Scoot that front right sub a little bit more towards the corner, and put the cylinder in the back
cylinder in that rear left corner underneath your surround left speaker there, and some glass French doors, and let's close in this room.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mm-hmm. Look at the Seaden. Do we have any thoughts or suggestions? Room treatments.
Yeah, I mean, it is fully carpeted. That's good. And
that's it. Yeah. There's carpet and blank walls everywhere around there. So.
And I mean, I don't think he would claim that he's getting absorption from the covering over his windows, because those are some flat shades, not certainly not plush, heavy, bunched up curtains.
Right.
Definitely acoustic treatments. First reflection points on the sides. You could go for a freestanding panel to go, on that right hand side, because you wouldn't be able to mount it to the window.
There's a bunch of pictures on the left wall. I'm not really sure what that's all about.
Yeah, blue left wall, some pictures over there. I mean, if you want to get a printed panel to replace those, that doesn't look like copyrighted images, at least on that larger one.
I would put that front wall too, as many places as you could fit them between the TVs or behind the speakers or whatever.
I'm not usually as concerned about the front wall. The back wall you could put some panels on.
Back walls, yeah.
But definitely the sides. There's no reason you can't do the sides by using some freestanding on the right. And printed on the left.
That's about the only thing I see. This is a really nice theater.
It's a very nice looking theater.
And let's just
you could get a bigger TV, right? We would never say no to a bigger TV.
This thing streams projection system, but let's just let that lie. So you want good bass, right? And we've talked about good bass in this podcast over and over again. Closing in this room makes it possible for you to get the second sub and have it work the way it's supposed to, where the good bass is easy, and you're like, well, that's a lot of expense, maybe I just get the second subwoofer. But the problem is the fact that you identified that the subwoofer is louder at one seat than it is at the other seat means that you're not pressurizing the space.
It's clearly non-uniform.
It's very non-uniform. So it's escaping up that hallway. It's doing all sorts of things. You don't know what it's doing. So if you said, I don't want to get the doors, what can I do? Well, we're going to say, get rid of that sub, get a much bigger sub so that we can fill up the entire space.
And potentially position it differently, like maybe in the very middle.
He's got lots of positioning options here. Like he's one of the, very rarely do we can just keep scooting it down the wall till it sounds good.
I mean, you could put it directly below your center speaker. You've got enough height there. It could fit right in the middle of your front wall.
Yeah.
You could do that.
So, I mean, that might even be worth just trying right now. Just scoot that subwoofer all the way over to the center.
Put it right in the middle, right below your center speaker there. You could absolutely do that. But if you
really want to get that good, couch rattling, bone shaking,
blur your vision
bass,
rattle your teeth.
You need two things: doors. So, yeah, 2 doors. All right, Adam. Adam has written to us previously when some of his house was still unfinished. The basement where he will eventually build a dedicated theater is still unfinished and will remain that way for a few years, a.k.a. nearly forever. Don't have children. They'll screw everything up. But the upstairs... I'm sorry.
Such advice.
I mean, it's really life hacks from Tom. Don't have kids. They ruin everything. This is the podcast where you could take Tom out of context. It's not even out of context. It's just quote Tom to offend everybody. Let's see here. The basement was finished and will remain that way for a few years, but the upstairs is mostly done now, and they've placed some furniture so they have an idea what the final layout will look. He's dealing with a huge, wide open great room, and aesthetics are extremely important. Last time he wrote, we suggested he could use the KEF HTF 8003 passive soundbar up front on his fireplace mantle for a very clean look, and then perhaps some extremely slim KEF T series on the on-wall speakers as surrounds. We warned him away from using in-ceiling speakers with his very high ceiling, or putting his surround speakers behind him and up high on the section just in front of the kitchen in the back. Yeah, I seem to kind of sort of remember this. Yeah, this is
definitely a very wide open space. In the photos he sent now, we don't see, but I mean, it's completely open to the second floor as well. There's a staircase on the right-hand side this whole place is wide open and hard and flat for the most part.
And everything else.
Yeah, and he's sitting a good distance away. He's facing a fireplace. There's a mantle on there. The TV's above that fireplace. And aesthetics were a big concern, so we're like, well, nothing in here is going to be what we would probably consider fantastic acoustics-wise, but if looks are number one concern, then that KEF passive soundbar.
Is this the actual room right now that we're looking at these pictures? Because it looks like there's speakers on either side of this thing. What are those things?
Well, so there's speakers up front to the fireplace. So he's got some Polk towers that he just set up there, and he sat a center speaker on an ottoman in front of the fireplace.
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just sitting there. Now, he's drawn in some red rectangles where the surround speakers might go to the sides. Those, of course, are just graphics.
Yeah, okay. So am I reading this question? I forgot where I left off.
We're on to A.
Now that we've got a better idea of the final layout and look at the room, his wife has agreed that bookshelf-sized speakers to either side of the fireplace column would be all right. Adam is thinking everything would sound better with the front, left, right speakers spread further apart. The seating is about 13 to 14 feet away, but he would still need a very slim, attractive center speaker. He knows Polk makes a slim center, but he already has Polk speakers and actually hoping for an upgrade. So any suggestions? He's hoping for keeping the price of 5 speakers to around $2,000 or less. So what were the ones we suggested for his surrounds? His KEF, the T series. Those are like the little thin ones, right?
Those are the super thin ones. I mean, it was because we were already talking about KEF with potentially the 3. I mean, so it's 3 speakers in one bar. That's what the HTF 8003 is. So it looks like a sound bar, but it's just 3 passive speakers that happen to have that form factor. And then since he has these spaces to the left and the right, we're like, like the T301, the very, very flat on-wall speakers could certainly go there without making the aesthetics a problem. They're super skinny and just a flat white rectangle. So, that could work and it would all be KEF, but he's like, if he gets that HTF 8003, then he would just have the soundbar up front. That wouldn't give him very much of a width in the left-right stereo spread, he's thinking. And since he has the okay now to put some bookshelf speakers, so not directly to the left and right of the actual fireplace, but the fireplace is in sort of a column that sticks out a little bit, and they're going to have some stands to the left and the right of that column, so that's where the bookshelf speakers would live. So actually spread quite wide. It looks about 9 or 10 feet apart.
So even wider than he's got them right now.
Yes, wider than he has his towers right now.
I want to say something that Rob may not agree with, but I would like you to bank this goodwill instead of spending it right now. I feel like going with the sound bar up front, and the thin speakers on the walls where we suggested them before, gives you that nice clean look, especially up front where your wife is really going to care about it. If every time she looks at the TV, she looks at those speakers and gets a little bit angrier at you than she was a few minutes ago, then I feel like that's not worth it. Bank your goodwill, bank your, worrying about stereo imaging for trying to buy multiple subwoofers for your home theater, because that's
that's in the future. That's
what's coming.
Years
right?
away.
That's what you're working towards. This right here, I feel like the sonic benefits you're going to get from having speakers placed out wide in order to get a better left-right separation is in this room, in this space, with all of these hard surfaces and all these places for the sound to get lost. I don't think it's going to be worth it.
And if this is your setup and that is your TV already mounted above the fireplace, they're going to be much wider than the width of your TV. I mean, it's not inappropriate for your seating distance. I'm not saying that.
Oh, no, you're right. Yeah.
But, you're probably not going to have a gigantic projection screen in front of your fireplace, so it starts to put the front left and right speakers quite far apart. I mean, I don't think the HDF 8003 is a bad choice. I mean, and as far as left-right stereo spread, using that soundbar, it's better than you might think. You can definitely tell left from right, even though it's this soundbar shape. They've designed things well, and they put the tweeters right to the outsides, and they're using that concentric Kef design to give it some good directionality, and you can definitely tell left from right, even in your setup. That said, I could also point you to JBL's Stage series.
Okay.
Because they have that nice slim center. I'm showing an image without the grill, so don't worry. It doesn't look like that all the time. There's a grill you can put on front if you're looking at the image on YouTube. But they've got a nice slim center. Now it uses the, in my opinion, much better tweeter and waveguide that JBL is using in that Stage series than what the Polks are offering. So they're not that much more. They are a little bit more expensive than the Polks, but not tremendously more. Certainly you can fit within your budget. No problem. In fact, you're well below your budget with the JBL Stage series. And they have a nice A130 bookshelf speaker that could go along with that slim center. So that is certainly an option. If that's what you have your heart set on, I can recommend the JBL Stage series. I can also back what Tom is saying, and that if you stick with the Kef plan, I don't think you're going wrong.
Yeah. Next issue are his surround speakers. Mounting something directly to the left of his sectional seating seems easy enough, but the right side is more problematic. There's a small window-like opening into an office where you could potentially put a right surround speaker, but it would be low at an angle, and he doesn't really want a speaker balancing on that ledge at all times. But we had suggested he could mount a speaker to the right wall created by the staircase, but that would actually be a little in front of his seat, so would that be a major problem? And on top of the speaker placement decision, running wires to that right side could be done, but wires would need to go down into the basement, go through a bunch of floor joists, and then back up into that right wall. Certainly doable, but he wouldn't want to go to all the cost and effort unless the location is ideal. So is there maybe a wireless solution that could work? Any way to get to use Denon Heo speakers as surrounds? Perhaps. I mean, we already just talked about the Amphony, so there's that.
There's the Amphony, but I mean, the thing is, the looks of that are not going to be super clean because the Amphony amplifier has to be plugged into power somewhere, and then you still need to run speaker wire from that to the speaker. So, I mean, all of that could be done inside of walls and that, but I'm not seeing that as tremendously better. I mean, really the question is, if you do install a speaker, be it on wall or in wall, in that section that's created by the staircase over to the right. Now, he's saying that, in the image it's a bit tough to see because it's being photographed at a little bit of an angle.
Yeah.
But he's like, that's about 2 feet in front of the seats. Whereas the one on the left is like directly in line. Now, my first question is, can you scooch the seats forward?
Yeah, really?
Like a foot and a half, 2 feet? I mean, it doesn't look impossible. It looks like you got plenty of walkway space to get in on the right-hand side if you scooched them forward like a foot and a half or 2 feet, at which point I would say, yeah, definitely mount it on that side wall.
I don't understand why it has to be that far forward. I mean, why can't you mount it?
Well, I mean, I guess there's probably structure there. You can't put it right to the back. But if it's on wall, you could put it right to the back.
Well, that's what I'm saying. On wall, right to the back, or even where it is in the little door, in the little window way. Mount it just to the left of that on the wall and angle it
like up.
Yeah, up. and then angle it, up and
get something that comes with a
frame.
pivot mount, right?
Yeah, pivot mount, and just put it right there. It seems like this, or even to the right of it. To be honest with you, right of that window, it'd be further back.
It'd be farther back, yeah.
But
and then you could put the left one on the doorway part.
Yeah.
Instead of the recessed part
and
by the windows.
Don't worry that one's further away from you than the other. Who no one cares.
No, the further away doesn't matter. But we want. It would be nice if your two surround speakers are about the same distance, beside or behind your seats. That's nice if you can do that. But that seems entirely doable. Certainly with on walls. You could do that.
That's what the T-Series are, though, aren't they? Aren't they all?
Oh, yeah, the T-Series. I still like those T-Series because if aesthetics are a super big concern, those T-Series speakers are as unobtrusive as an on-wall can possibly get.
Right.
They really are. And even with the JBLs, that wouldn't be such a mismatch. I'd worry about that.
All right, we'll do one more, and then I'm going to fall asleep. So, Michael. Michael is the fellow in Newfoundland, Canada, who was one of our first listeners to write us about the hassles of using an AV receiver when you're visually impaired. Michael has been away from the podcast and home theater in general for a while, but he's back now and looking to upgrade his Denon 1912 receiver. He's sticking with a 5.1 setup, plus powering his own 2. So a 7.1 model is what he wants, but Atmos is not a concern. His budget tops out at $600 Canadian. Since he uses the smartphone app with a screen reader to control his AV receiver, he did a little research and downloaded the latest apps from the major receiver brands. You see, this is something that it's so sad, but it's true. People who do not have whatever the issue is, whatever that problem is, can't even imagine the kind of hoops that you have to jump through when you do have the problem.
Yeah, so when it comes to accessibility, whether you're visually impaired or hearing impaired.
Well, even, gender differences and, race differences and stuff like that. I can imagine what it's like to be a woman. I can imagine what it's like. Even when I say, I can't. None of us can. And, it never would have occurred to me that before he can make a receiver decision, he would have to download the apps to see how well they work with his
screen reader. Exactly.
But it's absolutely true, and once you say it, you're like, "Oh, well, of course."
Yeah.
But what a hassle! I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you have to go through that, man. I really am, Michael. All right, whatever. Download the latest apps from the major receiver brands. Back when he got his Denon 1912, Denon's app was the most accessible, but now things have flipped. The newest Denon app isn't as accessible as the old one, but Onkyo's newest app seems pretty good now. Well, that's good because Onkyos are cheap. So this led him to the Onkyo NR686, which we've just been talking about, being his front runner, but he wanted to double check what our thoughts are on that model. Also, he'd like to know if Accessories for Less will ship to Canada, as he'd love to save some money if possible. You're going to save money shipping to Canada.
Also, we'll just answer that right away. Accessories for Less will not ship any of the receivers they sell to Canada. They're not allowed to.
Not allowed to. He can afford the Onkyo 686 from Best Buy, but if he can get it for even less, why not? So there's got to be B stock someplace that he can buy.
There sure is from Gibby's. Yeah. We have mentioned Gibby's before, but he has been away from the podcast for a while, so might not have heard that advice. Gibby's electronicsupermarket.ca. They are Canadian. They get their B stock directly from the manufacturer, just like Accessories for Less does in the States. You get a 1-year manufacturer's warranty with any of their B stock items, so they're kind of the equivalent for AV receiver B stock in Canada. You can get the 686 from them for $400. So that's a cost savings. $500. Shouldn't misrepresent there, but no, $500, $100. No, it is right. $400. I'm screwing up. I'm getting tired.
It's all right. It's tired.
$400 is the 686B stock. $500 is the 686 brand new. So you could save there by getting that. Now, what do we think of that model in general? The only thing that I'm not a super duper fan of that model is it does have the basic version of AccuEQ. So it's
Garbo.
One measurement position, which is essentially useless. I mean, it's fine for setting your trim levels and your distances, but I would not want to use it for its EQ. So you could consider upgrading to the 787 instead of the 686, the 787. Now, if you get that as B stock from Gibby's, it's $540. So you're spending more than the brand new 686, but you're getting a 787, which now has AccuEQ Advance, which does at least take multiple measurement positions and does some spatial averaging the way that EQ should be done. And It also has 9 amplifiers built in, so if you ever want to have 4 overhead speakers, it could do it. He said he doesn't want to do that. So
Right.
So you really only
the one person who listens to this podcast who might be able to really discern a difference in the audio cues, as he's
paying much more attention to the audio positions than the video. Yes.
The one guy who could actually enjoy Atmos for what it was intended for is like, nah, I'm good. Like,
I mean,
thanks, Michael. You got my back.
I like the 686. Onkyo has for the past while had very good amplifier sections, so that is certainly a positive in their favor. There's almost nothing to complain about. I mean, every streaming source, every multi-room wireless thing, they're like, we work with everybody. They're the most ubiquitous. They do work with Google Assistant instead of Amazon Assistant, if that matters to you at all. But really, the 686, the only thing that gives me pause is that I would use AccuEQ to automatically set my distances and trim levels, but then I wouldn't use it for the actual equalization part. I would turn it off after that point. So if that's okay by you, $400 for the B stock is really a pretty good deal.
1912 have? It's got what, XT maybe?
I think it was just standard EQ if it was even multi-Q at all.
Yeah, it might not have been. He might not even be able to know this difference anyway.
I know.
So
I know.
Might be okay.
So we'll put that out. You could get the 787 for the more advanced AccuEQ Advanced.
Last one, Infinite Gary. One of Gary's many TVs is a Sony A8F OLED. In order to use HDMI ARC with his Marantz SR1611, it was necessary to turn on HDMI-CEC in the Sony. It hasn't caused any big problems, so Gary doesn't mind. But if he uses Sony TV's remote to power the Sony on and off, then the Marantz will turn on and off along with it. That's fine. Convenient even. But if he uses the Marantz receiver's remote, if he powers on the Marantz, the Sony TV turns on too. But if he turns the Marantz off, the Sony TV stays on. None of this is any sort of big problem. Gary would just like to understand why it works this way. Because CC is stupid.
It's a bit crazy. Yeah.
I would wonder if he's actually got CEC on in the Marantz as well. I guess he has
not
to,
only
right?
that, but the Marantz gives you much more granular control of different parts.
Sounds to me like the Sony's doing, like it's just more blunt force doing everything, whereas the Marantz has got, it gives you the option of doing things slightly differently. That would be my guess.
Yeah, because within the Marantz, in the HDMI section of its settings menu, so first of all, in the Marantz, you can turn ARC on independent of all the other parts of CEC.
Right.
So the Sony TV has to have CEC on. That's true. But in the Marantz, you could have it so that only ARC is turned on, only the audio return channel is turned on, and none of the CEC control or power commands are turned on within the Marantz. You can turn that stuff on and off independent of the audio return channel. So that's one way. If you don't want them to power on and off together, you could do that. Within the Marantz's menu, you do have the options of turning on the CEC control. So that's like using your Sony's remote to do things like play and pause and fast forward and stuff commands from the Sony TV remote. But then the power part is also its own separate thing. So, that should be most of it. There's the thing that says, I know for sure there's the one that says when I turn my TV on and off, turn my AV receiver on and off along with it.
Right.
Whether there actually is an option to go the other direction, I'm not sure. It might just be one of these weird things with CEC where it just doesn't do it that way.
Right.
Yeah, no, there's not a great explanation, Gary. It's just that the one thing we can say is that Marantz receiver does allow you to toggle on and off independent parts of the CEC.
I would probably try to get that Marantz to do it the way that the Sony's doing it, just
to turn the TV off when the Marantz turns off.
Yeah. It's just convenience.
The other thing is you could turn it all off and just use a Harmony, right? That's the
Harmony, the CEC that doesn't suck. So
well, it's the answer to having CEC turned off. I loved over on Entertainment 2.0, Richard Gunther over there. He's had a Cavo for quite a while now.
I don't know what that is. Oh, is that remote?
That's the thing that it actually through machine learning, quote unquote, watches what your sources are doing, so you talk to it, you talk to the Cavo, and it will like control your streaming devices and actually like figure out how many up and down clicks and OKs and stuff that it needs to do. Like the whole idea is that you just talk to it and it works, magically. But he's like, yeah, when it can, it relies on CEC, and that causes so many problems that he's just like, even though the price of the Cavo is like $100 now, which is insane.
Right.
He's like, I got rid of it and went back to a Harmony. Because the problem, when something goes wrong in the Cavo, you don't have individual device control to fix it yourself.
Right.
You kind of have to like unplug everything and start over.
Yep. Yeah. Every once in a while, I'll turn
times.
everything on and the projector won't come on.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they used to have a help button on the one of the earlier ones, but to get
There's
to the
still
help button,
buttons.
there's the help button, but you have to go into a menu to get to it now. I always forget about it. I was like, by the time I get into the menu to find the help button, I've already gotten to devices and just turned it on.
Done it manually. Yes.
All right, what do we got left?
We have Adam G and Josh L. Those are the fellows left on our list, and we'll answer you next week.
All right, let's thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Joshua and Stefan for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, giving us a PayPal donation, and thank our 82 patrons over at patreon.com.
That's right, Joshua and Stefan, thank you very much for those PayPal donations, and thanks so much to our 82 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation.
Thank you. If you want to get your question answered, just all you have to do is ask. You just email us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Antry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.